The telegraph sounder began tapping Daniel Stroud's private sign, 10 months after Daniel Stroud was buried. Lenora Bell froze with her pencil above the Juniper Wells message form. Outside the station windows, the last freight cars were shrinking into the late May dusk of 1891, leaving only cinders, rail dust, and the low hum of wire over the Arizona Territory. Inside, the brass arms struck again, Daniel's sign. Not merely his initials, but the short private call he had used with 3 operators he trusted. Lenora was one of them. Her first thought was impossible. Her second was worse. Someone had learned it. She bent over the desk and copied every mark. Wade Stroud to Mile House before moonrise. Come alone, express business. Urgent. The spacing nearly matched Daniel's old hand. Nearly. The sender crowded the opening strokes, then hesitated twice inside the letter R. Daniel had never done that. No office call followed. No relay identification. No operator signed the transmission. Lenora wrote the station time beneath it, then copied the message again on a second sheet. One copy went under the black blotter. The other she folded into her coat. The sounder fell silent. She waited for a correction, a sending office code, anything that might turn the impossible into ordinary line trouble. Nothing came. The relief operator had promised to return before sundown. His stool remained empty. If Lenora left the station, Orson Vale could dismiss her before breakfast. If she stayed, Wade Stroud would ride alone into a trap bearing his dead brother's sign. She opened the station log. North Line warning received. Relief absent. Gone to Deliver. She added the time and signed her full name. Lenora Bell, not L. Bell. Not a clerk's mark someone else could deny. Her own hand had made one lie official 10 months ago. Tonight it would leave a trail. She locked the cash drawer, took the hired bay mare from the station lean-to, and rode north. The 7 miles to Mile House climbed through broken high desert, where juniper and black rock swallowed the road whenever the moon slipped behind thin cloud. Lenora did not waste the mare early. She held her to a hard, even pace, listening for another rider behind her. Twice she heard stones roll from the slope. Once a shape moved parallel to the road and vanished. Coyote, deer, or man. She could not tell. By the time the abandoned stage stop came into view, the moon had cleared the ridge. One horse stood behind the building. Wade's sorrel. The reins dragged through the dust. No light showed at the windows. Lenora dismounted before the mare fully stopped and tied her behind a stand of scrub oak. Wade? No answer. The Mile House door stood open 6 inches. She pushed it with the barrel of the small revolver she carried for station deposits. The room smelled of cold ash, old leather, and fresh blood. Wade Stroud lay half inside the doorway, one shoulder against the jamb, his hat several feet away. A dark line ran from his hair into the dust at his temple. His right hand was empty. The leather dispatch pouch that usually crossed his chest was gone. Lenora knelt beside him and touched 2 fingers below his jaw. Pulse, slow but present. His breathing caught once, then continued. Wade. She tapped his uninjured cheek, no response. She checked the room before touching him again. One chair overturned, a cup broken near the stove. No scattered coins, no searched cupboards, no sign that a hungry drifter had ransacked the place. Whoever struck Wade had taken one object and left quickly. The pouch. Lenora caught him beneath the arms and dragged him away from the doorway. He was too heavy to lift onto the cot. She settled him on the floor beside it, folded his coat beneath his head, and turned his face so he could breathe if he sickened. His shoulder resisted when she moved it. Bruised, perhaps worse. The scalp cut bled less than it had, but blood had dried along his collar. She found a water crock, a clean length of flour sack, and an oil lamp with enough fuel for several hours. After washing the cloth, she pressed it against the wound. Wade's mouth tightened, yet he did not wake. "That is good," she whispered. "Be angry with me later." She barred the shutters, then the door. A shotgun hung above the back pegs with 2 shells in the leather loop. Lenora checked the barrels, set it beside the wall, and left it uncocked. Outside, the bay mare shifted. Wade's sorrel answered with a low breath. Then came another sound, a hoof striking stone beyond the corral. Lenora blew out the match she had not yet used. Darkness closed around her. She waited with one hand on the revolver. Nothing crossed the doorway. No one called. A minute passed, then another. Perhaps the rider had moved on. Perhaps the rider was waiting for her lamp. Lenora lit it anyway. Wade needed warmth more than she needed concealment. The room brightened in a small amber circle. She removed her gray prayer shawl and wrapped it over his chest and shoulders. Tiny bellflowers, embroidered years ago by her mother, showed along one edge. The corner nearest Wade's hand was frayed almost through. Lenora tucked it beneath his arm so the cold could not pull it loose. His fingers moved once against the wool. Reflex, she told herself, nothing more. She sat beside him with the revolver near her knee and the shotgun within reach. Wade Stroud had spoken to her only twice since Daniel's burial. The first time, he asked whether she had written the confession. She told him yes. The second time, he said, no decent man should trust a bell near a telegraph key. She had not defended herself. Without the hidden warning, defense would have sounded like cowardice, dressed as grief. Now he lay under her shawl, because someone had used Daniel's sign to bring him here, and the truth hidden inside the Juniper Wells clock might already be the reason. Wade's breathing roughened. Lenora touched the folded cloth to his temple again. "Stay," she said. The word was for him. The prayer that followed was for both of them. She lowered her head beside the sleeping cowboy, certain he could not hear. "Let him wake hating me, Lord. Only do not let Daniel's lie take his brother too." Wade's fingers moved beneath the gray shawl before Lenora finished praying. She lifted her head and watched his hand. The movement stopped. His breathing stayed rough and uneven. His eyes closed. Pain, she told herself. Nothing more. Outside, one of the horses stamped in the cold. No rider crossed the window. Lenora wrung out the flour sack cloth, pressed it again to Wade's temple, and lowered her voice. "I should have spoken sooner." The words felt safer while he lay unconscious. Not because it would have saved me. It would not. But Daniel deserved someone to say the official message was wrong. Wade's brow tightened beneath the blood-dark hair. Lenora mistook it for another pain response. He sent a warning that night. My father received it at Juniper Wells and hid the original slip before the books could be checked. Later, another message came through in Daniel's name. It said he had abandoned his post and taken the payroll pouch. Her fingers trembled once against the wet cloth. She steadied them. My father knew the second message contradicted the first. Orson Vale had already been pressing him over missing route money and irregular transfers. Father told me the genuine slip was spoiled. Then he ordered me to enter the later relay into the official book. Wade's hand shifted again, closing weakly around the frayed corner of the shawl near Lenora's knee. She looked down. His grip lacked strength. Still, he did not let go. "I was a junior operator," she continued. "That is not the same as being a child. I heard the later relay. I wrote every word. I saw my father sign beneath it. I knew the wording sounded wrong. Daniel did not boast. He did not warn men away from following him. But I wrote it because my father ordered me to, and because Orson Vale stood on the other side of the counter waiting for the book." The admission settled in the little room harder than any accusation Wade had ever given her. Lenora kept her back straight. Even alone, she would not make herself smaller to ease the truth. "I did not know Daniel was already dead. I learned that later after the company called the message a confession, and the town called him a thief. By then my handwriting was in the book, my father's approval was under it, and Vale had already built the story around us." Wade's fingers tightened against the wool. Lenora leaned closer. Wade, his eyelids did not open. The pulse in his neck remained steady. She wet his lips with a few drops from the crock, careful not to give him enough to choke. "4 months ago, before my father died, he told me he had kept the true warning. He hid it inside the lower case of the station clock. He said I was not to open it alone, not for myself, not for Wade Stroud, not even for a company officer, only before witnesses." She looked toward the darkened window. "He did not tell me every word. He only said Daniel had named men who would destroy the message if they knew it survived." The old building creaked as the desert air cooled. Lenora reached for the revolver, then heard nothing more. "Since Father died, I have listened for the hand that sent the false relay. Operators leave habits in the wire. A crowded beginning, a break too long, a letter formed the same wrong way each time. The sign tonight belonged to Daniel, the hand did not." Wade breathed in sharply, his lashes lifted, At first his gaze held no recognition, only pain. Lenora set the revolver aside and braced one palm against the floor. "Do not try to sit." His eyes found the shawl, then the bloodied cloth in her hand. He looked toward the barred door. "Where?" His voice scraped. "Mile House. Pouch? Gone." Wade tried to rise anyway. His shoulder failed under him. Lenora caught his upper arm and guided him back before his head struck the floor. The contact lasted only as long as balance required. "You were hit at the temple," she said. "Your shoulder may be badly bruised, perhaps more. You cannot ride." "Horse? Outside." "So is mine." He closed his eyes against a wave of dizziness. His hand still held the edge of her shawl. Lenora waited for him to release it. He did not. "How much did you hear?" she asked. Wade opened his eyes again. Grief had cleared some of the confusion from them. "Enough." She could have asked what enough meant. She did not. Wade's gaze fixed on her face. What did Daniel truly send? There was no hatred in the question, not forgiveness either. Something narrower and more useful, a demand for fact. "I do not know every word," Lenora said. "I know where my father hid them." "The clock." "Yes, at Juniper Wells, inside the lower case." Wade swallowed. "Vale knows. He knew my father preserved more than he entered. I do not think he knows the exact hiding place." "Keel?" "I cannot say." Wade stared at the lamp flame, gathering pieces. Message came to the ranch sounder near sundown. Daniel's private call. Said to meet here alone. "You copied it?" "No, read it once. Road." Lenora held back the rebuke that rose too easily. "Did anyone see you leave, Cinderwash?" "Ruth." One hand near the horse barn. "What was in the pouch?" "Payroll drafts for 3 outfits. Cattle tallies. An express transfer notice for Juniper Wells." His mouth hardened. "Enough paper to make me a thief if it vanished under my hand." Lenora understood. The way Daniel was made one. "Yes." He looked toward the overturned chair. "I came in through the front. Heard a horse behind the wall. Turned, saw no face. Something struck from the side." He paused until the pain eased, woke once. "Heard 2 horses, maybe." Could not move. Lenora remembered the sound beyond the corral. One may still be near. Wade shifted his grip on the shawl as if intending to rise. Lenora placed her hand flat on the floor between them, not on him. "If you stand, you may fall before you reach the door. If he comes back, the door is barred. The shotgun is loaded. I can use it." His eyes moved to the weapon, then to the revolver by her knee. He assessed rather than argued. "How long have I been out?" "I do not know. Less than 2 hours since I reached you." "You have been awake less than 5 minutes." "You left the station?" "Yes. Vale will dismiss you, likely. To bring me a warning. To stop another lie from being completed." Wade's jaw tightened, but the anger no longer pointed only at her. "Open the clock before witnesses." "Who?" "Deputy Sheriff Tomas Ortega, Ruth Danner, Mateo Ruiz if he is available." "No one tied to Vale." Wade considered the names. "And me." Lenora studied his pallor and the dried blood at his collar. "If you can travel without risking your life." "I will." "That is not yet a fact." A faint, humorless breath left him. "You speak like a message book." "Message books survive people's memories." Wade's eyes returned to her. "You thought I was asleep." "I thought you were unconscious. You said Daniel's lie might take his brother." Lenora's throat tightened. "It nearly did. You also said I might wake hating you." "You did hate me." "I did." The past tense struck harder than kindness would have. She did not trust it yet. Wade looked down at the shawl caught in his fingers. Slowly he opened his hand and released the wool. Choice made visible. "Then we do nothing alone," he said. "Not the clock, not Keel, not Vale." Lenora folded the frayed corner back over his chest. "Agreed." A hoof stopped outside. Both of them went still. The horses near the corral answered with low, uneasy sounds. Wade reached toward his empty belt and remembered too late that his revolver was gone. Lenora lifted hers and moved beside the wall, out of line with the door. A boot touched the porch. Then came 3 measured knocks. "Stroud," a man called. "The express company sent me for its pouch." Lenora knew the voice. Barton Keel. Lenora kept the revolver aimed beside the door rather than through it. "The pouch is gone," Wade called. His voice was weak, but it carried. Barton Keel answered from the porch. "Then open up and let me see for myself." Lenora glanced toward Wade. He had pushed one elbow beneath him, trying to sit higher without letting pain show. His empty holster lay visible at his side. You have company authority over the pouch, she said. Not over this building. Company property was taken from Stroud while Miss Bell was absent from her station. That makes both of you part of the inquiry. An inquiry does not begin with an armed man forcing a door. Keel struck the latch once with the heel of his hand. The bar held. Open it. Wade's eyes moved to Lenora's coat, then to the saddlebags near the wall. He understood before Keel spoke again. I want Stroud's gear searched, Keel said. And yours, Miss Bell. Lenora's grip steadied. No, you left a company post without leave. Vale can dismiss you for that before dawn. Then he may dismiss me at the station. You may not reach it. The words were mild. The threat was not. Wade pulled one knee under him and nearly collapsed when the room tilted. Lenora took a step toward him. He raised his hand, stopping her before she had to choose between helping him and keeping the door covered. Ask her, Wade said. Keel went silent outside. Ask what? Ask Lenora if she consents to your search. She is under company authority. Wade's breathing had gone shallow from the effort of remaining upright. The pouch is company property. Her person is not. Keel's voice sharpened. You cannot even stand. I can still hear her answer. Lenora felt the weight of the revolver in her hand, and the greater weight of being allowed to refuse without having to justify herself. Keel tried another approach. Miss Bell, if you have nothing to hide, open the door. No. Then I will report that you obstructed the recovery of stolen express property. Report what happened. Include the fact that you arrived alone at night and demanded to search a woman without a deputy present. A horse moved beyond the wall. Not one of theirs. Lenora heard the faint scrape of leather and knew Keel had not come alone. Wade heard it too. His gaze shifted toward the back window. How many men did Vale send? He asked. Enough. Keel's answer came too quickly. Wade lowered his voice. Lenora, the shotgun. She holstered the revolver long enough to lift the shotgun from the wall. The barrels felt heavier than they had before. Wade watched her check the hammers without cocking them. He did not tell her how to hold it. He did not reach for it. Keel, Wade called. You opened that door without her consent, and every man who hears of it will know why you needed darkness. The porch boards creaked. For one breath, Lenora thought Keel might force the latch anyway. Then a distant shout carried from the road. Mile House! Another voice answered from farther back. Hooves approached at speed. Keel stepped away from the door. Lenora moved to the shutter crack. Two riders came over the rise, one leading a third horse. The first was Mateo Ruiz. The second was Eli Voss from Cinderwash. Mateo slowed only when he saw the extra horse behind the building. Who is there? He called. Keel answered before Lenora could. Company business. Then company business has cut its own north wire, Mateo said. He dismounted with a coil of repair line over one shoulder. Found the break below the ridge, fresh cut. Tracks came this way. Lenora unbarred the door only after Mateo identified himself twice. Keel stood several yards from the porch, coat closed, expression flat. Another rider waited behind him in shadow. Lenora could not see the man's face. Wade tried to rise as the door opened. His legs failed. Mateo crossed the room in 3 strides and caught him under the uninjured arm. Sit before you make the doctors work harder. Pouch is gone, Wade said. Mateo examined the scalp wound, then Wade's pupils by lamplight. How long was he senseless? Unknown, Lenora said. I found him less than 2 hours ago. He has been awake perhaps 15 minutes. No sickness, tried standing twice, failed twice. Mateo glanced at her. Good account. Keel stepped into the doorway. Then we search before evidence leaves. Wade turned his head despite the pain. No, Stroud. She refused. Keel looked at Lenora. They will hear of this. He should, she replied. He should also hear that the line was cut before you arrived. Mateo shifted his attention to the shadowed rider. You going to show your face? The man reined backward. Keel mounted without answering. This is not finished. Wade leaned against the wall, pale beneath the dried blood. No. His voice remained level. It is witnessed now. Keel's mouth hardened. He and the second rider turned east instead of toward Juniper Wells. Mateo watched until the hoofbeats faded. That is not the shortest road to town. No, Lenora said. It leads toward the old spur. Eli had already swung back into the saddle. I will ride for Ruth and the buckboard, Wade objected. I can ride. Mateo pressed 2 fingers to the bruised shoulder. Wade's face lost what little color remained. "You can fall from a horse," Mateo said. "That is not the same skill." Eli rode south. Dawn found them still at Mile House. Ruth Danner arrived driving the buckboard herself, wrapped in a dark wool coat, gray hair pinned beneath a plain hat. She took in the barred shutters, Wade's bandage, Lenora's shawl around his shoulders, and the absence of the pouch. "Which trouble first?" she asked. "Wade's head," Lenora said. "Then the cut wire. Then Vale." Ruth nodded as if Lenora had presented a ranch account in proper order. She sent Eli ahead to find Deputy Sheriff Tomas Ortega if he had returned from the South Road. Mateo and Lenora helped Wade into the buckboard. He kept the gray shawl around him until they reached the wagon. Then he touched its edge. "May I keep this until we are moving?" "Yes." Lenora climbed onto the rear bench. Morning cold had settled through her dress and coat. Wade saw her hands close against it. Ruth removed a heavier coat from beneath the seat and offered it across him. Wade took the coat but did not place it around Lenora. He held it where she could choose. "Will you take it?" Lenora accepted. Their fingers touched only at the woolen collar. "Thank you." Wade nodded once. The buckboard rolled towards Cinder Wash, 9 miles south of Juniper Wells. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun had cleared the ridge. A doctor from a neighboring spread cleaned Wade's wound, bound his shoulder, and ordered him into Ruth's downstairs room. Lenora was given the small guest room across the hall. She slept less than an hour before Ruth called everyone to the office. Wade sat in a straight-back chair despite the doctor's objections, a clean shirt covering the bruise. Mateo stood near the company sounder mounted beside Ruth's cattle ledger. 2 duplicate inventory sheets hung in a clip beneath it. Ruth noticed Lenora reading them. "The express company keeps equipment here for cattle and freight notices," she said. "They send me copies of every issued key, relay, and battery box, so no superintendent can claim my ranch misplaced what his own men carried away." Lenora filed the fact in memory. Wade explained only what the others needed to know. Daniel's true warning survived inside the Juniper Wells clock. Vale might remove the station equipment. Keel had demanded an unwitnessed search. He did not repeat the prayer. Ruth asked Lenora what she wanted. Wade answered before Lenora could mistake the question for courtesy. 3 choices. She can stay here under Ruth's roof. We can send her south before Vale closes the road against her. Or we retrieve Daniel's message before the clock is moved. He looked at Lenora, not Ruth. "You choose." She had spent 10 months being defined by a message another man ordered her to write. The choice came cleanly. "With whom?" Ruth asked. "Deputy Sheriff Ortega." "You." "Mateo." No one tied to Vale touches the clock first, every step witnessed, every hand named. Wade nodded. "Done." "You stay here if the doctor says you cannot travel." His jaw set. "Lenora, the evidence does not become stronger because you bleed beside it." Mateo lowered his eyes to hide approval. Wade held her gaze, then accepted the limit. "Bring back Daniel's words. Whatever is there," she said. "Not what either of us wants them to be." Near midnight, a rider reached Cinder Wash with an envelope bearing Orson Vale's office stamp. Ruth broke it before witnesses. The notice ordered all Juniper Wells station equipment inventoried and removed at sunrise. The first item listed was the station clock. The wagon left Cinder Wash before the eastern ridge had taken color. Lenora sat beside Ruth with the gray prayer shawl wrapped over her coat, its frayed corner tucked beneath one hand. Mateo rode behind them with his tool roll tied across the saddle. Wade remained at the ranch under the doctor's order, furious enough to argue and weak enough to lose. Before they left, he had stood in the office doorway with one shoulder bound beneath his shirt and said only, "Bring back Daniel's words." Lenora had answered, "Whatever is there." Now the road to Juniper Wells ran pale beneath. The moon, 9 miles of dust, stone, and cold air. No one wasted breath on reassurance. They needed the station before Vale's men reached it. Deputy Sheriff Tomas Ortega waited beside the platform when the wagon arrived. His horse was tied near the freight shed, damp at the flanks from a fast ride. "I came from the South Road," he said. "No company crew yet." He showed Lenora the small notebook in which he had written the date, hour, weather, and names of everyone present. "You still have the station key, until Vale takes it from me." The key turned cleanly. Inside, the station smelled of coal dust, paper, dry wood, and old battery acid. The clock hung above the message counter. Its white face stopped at 3:58. Lenora had watched it every day for 4 months, without touching the lower case. Ephraim had repaired the panel himself after the winter dust storms. 2 screw heads held it beneath the dial. Ortega moved no closer than the public side of the counter. "Tell us what you expect before anyone opens it." Lenora kept her eyes on the clock. A folded message slip wrapped in cloth. "My father said it was Daniel's first warning. He said I was not to remove it alone." "Did he tell you the wording?" "No, the time. He said the relay reached Juniper Wells before the message I entered into the official book." "Nothing more." Ortega recorded her answer. Mateo placed his tool roll on the counter and inspected the screw heads without touching them. "No fresh marks," he said. "Dust settled even. They have not been turned lately." Ruth stood where she could see both his hands and the clock. "Proceed." Mateo loosened the first screw, then the second. The panel came away with a soft wooden sigh. Behind it lay a narrow hollow in the clock case and a packet wrapped in plain cotton. No other object rested inside. Ortega stepped forward. "Leave it where it is." Mateo withdrew his hands. Ortega washed them from the station basin, dried them on a clean towel Ruth provided, and lifted the packet free. He placed it on the cleared counter. Lenora could hear the station wire humming overhead, though the sounder remained dead from the cut north line. Ortega opened the cotton. A message slip lay within, folded twice along old creases. The paper had yellowed at the edges. He unfolded it under the lamp. Lenora recognized Ephraim's handwriting before she read a word. The first lines were routing marks. "Origin East Spur, sent 9:07 p.m. Relayed Cedar Siding. Receive Juniper Wells 9:18 p.m. Beneath them stood the message. Hold eastbound. Kiel using Spur Key. Vale has payroll pooch." Ruth drew one measured breath. Mateo's hand closed around the edge of the counter. Ortega read the message aloud, then read it a second time, while Lenora followed every letter. Daniel had not confessed. He had warned them. He had named both men. "Is that your father's hand?" Ortega asked. "Yes," her voice held. "The receiving notation, relay route, and message copy are all his." "Can you swear the times were entered when the message arrived?" "No, I can swear only that he wrote them. Handwriting cannot prove honesty." Ruth turned toward her. The answer cost Lenora more than claiming certainty would have. She gave it anyway. Ortega nodded once and wrote her statement. "Can you identify Daniel's sending sign from this paper?" "No, a copied slip shows what my father heard and entered. The Cedar Siding relay book may show the origin sign. This does not." Mateo looked at the routing marks. "East Spur had a key shack. A fixed instrument?" Ortega asked. "Yes, small office beside the freight spur. Daniel knew it. If he sent at 9:07, he used that key before leaving the shack." Lenora studied the 11 minutes between sent and received. Why so long to reach Juniper Wells? "Cedar Siding may have held it behind line traffic," Mateo said, "or the North Circuit was already failing. We need the relay book." Ortega folded the slip along the original creases, returned it to the cotton, and placed both inside a clean envelope. Across the front he wrote the date, location, names of witnesses, and a short description of the item. Lenora, Ruth, and Mateo signed beneath his entry. Ortega sealed the flap and had each of them sign across it. Then he placed the envelope inside his coat. "From this point it remains in my custody until I transfer it by receipt." Mateo replaced the clock panel and tightened the screws only enough to secure the housing without damaging the old wood. The clock remained stopped at 3:58. Nothing had been removed except the message. Nothing had been left open. Hooves and wagon wheels sounded outside. Vale's crew arrived with sunrise. Haskins, the senior company clerk, entered first with 2 laborers and an inventory sheet. He stopped when he saw Ortega. "Company order says all equipment leaves this morning." "You may inventory company property," Ortega said. "You will not remove anything connected to an inquiry into assault, stolen express property, and suspected tampering with the company telegraph circuit until ownership and relevance are settled." Haskins looked toward Lenora. "Miss Bell, where is the clock contents?" There was one message slip inside the lower case. "Company message? Possibly." It is now sealed with the deputy sheriff. You had no authority to open company equipment. Lenora met his gaze. The clock case was opened before witnesses. The clock remains here. The message did not. Haskins did not argue with Ortega. He ordered the laborers to list each item instead. Sounder, relay box, battery jars, desk, chair, freight scale, wall clock. The clock received a notation that its lower panel had been opened once in the presence of witnesses and secured afterward. Nothing left the station. Near midday, a second rider brought Lenora a sealed notice from Orson Vale. Her suspension took effect immediately for unauthorized absence, improper copying of a private transmission, and interference with company operations. Lenora read it once. Then she removed the brass station badge from her coat and laid it beside the message key. "Your station key," Haskins said. She gave him that too. Outside, 3 townspeople watched from the general store porch. No one spoke. Lenora closed the station door for the last time, without being the person who held its key. By late afternoon, they were back at Cinder Wash. Wade waited in Ruth's office, pale from having ignored part of the doctor's order and crossed the room too many times. He did not ask first what Daniel had sent. Did Vale threaten you by notice? Was Keel there? No. Did anyone touch the packet after Ortega sealed it? No. Only then did he ask, what were Daniel's words? Ortega removed the sealed envelope from inside his coat and held it where Wade could see the signatures crossing the flap. Lenora repeated the routing marks first. Sent from East Spur at 9:07. Relayed through Cedar Siding. Received at Juniper Wells at 9:18. Then she gave him Daniel's message word for word. Wade's face lost all movement at his brother's name. Keel using Spur key, he repeated. Vale has payroll pouch. Yes. Daniel warned them before the wreck. The slip says he sent before the wreck was reported. We still need independent records. Ortega extended the envelope. Lenora accepted it under his eye and crossed to Wade. He opened one hand. She laid the sealed packet in his palm. He did not close his fingers around it. The envelope rested there, light as paper and heavy as 10 months of shame. Lenora let him hold it for one breath, then another. Wade's thumb moved near Daniel's name written on the outer description, but he did not touch the seal. She took the envelope back and returned it to Ortega. What time was the wreck found? Wade asked, Lenora said. That is all the conductor's report ever stated publicly. Daniel could have sent at 9:07 and died later, yes, or someone could have written the times afterward. Yes. Pain moved across his face, but Lenora would not soften the uncertainty. We have his warning. We do not yet have the whole night. Wade looked toward the stopped ranch office clock as if time itself had become an enemy. What do we need? The Cedar Siding relay book, the Prescott copybook, the conductor's time card, the doctor's death entry. Then we go to Prescott. When you can travel, I can't travel now, you can stand now. Those are not the same, he almost argued. Instead, he pressed his uninjured hand flat against the desk and accepted the difference. If Daniel sent at 9:07, he said. What happened in the next 15 minutes? Lenora turned toward the dark sounder on Ruth's wall. Prescott has the answer, if Vale has not reached it first. Then we find the answer without pretending suspicion is proof, Lenora said. Wade stood at Ruth's office desk, with one hand braced against the wood, his shoulder bound beneath a clean shirt and the fading cut at his temple, pulling whenever he frowned. Daniel named Keel, he said. Daniel named Keel using a spur key. He named Vale with the payroll pouch. That gives Deputy Ortega cause to ask questions. It does not put the missing key in Keel's hand today. You heard the same hesitation in the Milehouse message. I heard a habit that resembles his. Mateo heard it too. Mateo has not yet said so. Wade turned toward the line repairman. Mateo stood beside the ranch sounder with a small practice key, a spare relay, and one dry battery arranged on the writing table. I have heard Keel send, he said. Enough to know he breaks the letter R in 2 places when he is hurried. That still does not prove he sent the lure. Wade's mouth hardened. How many pieces make proof? Enough that one lie cannot knock them apart, Lenora answered. Ortega watched from beside Ruth's locked desk. Daniel's sealed warning rested inside that desk only because Ortega had placed it there himself and kept the key in his pocket. I cannot search Keel's quarters because 2 operators recognize a habit, the deputy sheriff said. I can question him. He can refuse. I can ask Vale for equipment records. He can delay. Then we give him less time, Wade said. By doing what? Lenora asked. Bringing Keel in. On what charge? Wade had no answer that would survive daylight. Lenora crossed to the practice key. Listen first. She adjusted the sounder so its strikes came softer. The sharp metal clicks had worsened Wade's headache the day before. He noticed what she had done and said nothing. Lenora sent Daniel's private call as she remembered it. Firm opening, equal spacing, clean finish. Then she formed the letter R once in Daniel's manner. One continuous movement. Daniel did not hesitate there, she said. Now the lure. She sent the same private call, then repeated the R with the sender's double break. Mateo's eyes narrowed. That is Keel's habit. Consistent with it, Lenora corrected. A man can copy a sign. He can even imitate spacing if he practices. Habits appear when he stops thinking. Wade leaned nearer, listening through the discomfort. Can a man change one? Yes. Then why does it matter? Because evidence does not need to stand alone to matter. Ruth opened the cabinet beneath the ranch ledger and removed the duplicate company inventory sheets Lenora had seen clipped there the day before. These arrived after the express company replaced the ranch relay boxes last year, she said. Every key, battery jar, sounder, and coil placed here or carried through for repair was listed twice. One copy for Vale's office, one for mine. She laid the sheets flat. Mateo followed the columns with one finger. Halfway down the second page, he stopped. Portable and 5-key, 1. Relay coil, 1. To Barton Keel. The return column was blank. Beside it, in another hand, someone had added, damage during wreck week. No further lation. Wade read the line twice. There is a missing instrument issued to Keel, Lenora said. Not proof he kept it, not proof he used it. But now the habit points toward a documented opportunity. Ortega copied the entry into his notebook, including the sheet number, and Ruth's statement of how the duplicate came into her possession. I will ask Vale for the matching original. He will say the key was destroyed, Wade said. Then he should have a disposal record, Lenora replied. Or a repair receipt, or a witness who saw the pieces. Mateo examined the notation. This handwriting is not mine. I reported no field key destroyed that week. Would Keel normally return equipment through you? Ortega asked. Yes. Or through the Prescott line office. Lenora took a clean sheet and wrote 5 items in a narrow hand. We need the Prescott copybook containing the false confession, the Cedar Siding relay book showing Daniel's original route, the conductor's time card, the doctor's death entry, and the maintenance record that explains why a field key issued to Keel vanished during the same week Daniel named him. Wade looked down at the list. You have built a road. A road is not the destination. It is more than we had yesterday. The admission came without argument. Lenora turned back to the practice key. Give me your hand. Wade's gaze lifted to hers. She held out her own, palm upward. He hesitated only long enough to understand that she was offering instruction, not comfort. Then he placed his hand in hers. His fingers were rough from reins and rope, warmer than she expected. Lenora positioned them lightly on the knob and set 2 fingers against the inside of his wrist. Do not strike from the shoulder, she said. The movement comes from here. She guided him through Daniel's clean R once, then again. Wade's first attempt landed too hard. The second carried better spacing. Lenora adjusted the angle of his wrist and sent Keel's broken pattern through him. Stroke, pause, stroke, second pause. The sounder answered. Wade listened with his head inclined toward the metal arm. That break feels deliberate. At first. A repeated habit becomes easier than doing it correctly. A habit can point, he said. Not convict. Good. His thumb moved once against the side of her hand, then stilled. Neither of them pretended not to notice the contact. Lenora withdrew first. The air between them retained the shape of her fingers on his wrist. Wade rested his hand on the desk rather than reaching after her. You sound disappointed, he said. I am relieved you listened. I am learning that part. By midday, Mateo had restored enough current through the town branch for a commercial transmission. Juniper Wells Station remained closed under Vale's order, but Mr. Purdy's general store kept a small key for freight prices, bank notices, and urgent ranch business. Ruth paid the line charge. Lenora sat behind the store counter with Ortega on one side, and Wade several feet behind her, close enough to hear but not crowd her work. The store smelled of coffee beans, lamp oil, saddle soap, and flour. 3 men stood near the dry goods shelves pretending not to watch. Hiram Cobb did not pretend. "Company lets accused women send official traffic now?" he asked. Mr. Purdy looked uneasy but said nothing. Lenora tested the key. The line answered weakly. "This traffic is being sent under Deputy Sheriff Ortega's request," she said. Cobb leaned an elbow on the counter. Same deputy who let a bell pull a message from her own father's clock. Wade took one step. Lenora raised one hand without turning. He stopped. That mattered more than Cobb's words. She placed her fingers on the key and sent Prescott a request for supervised access to the bound company copybook, the Cedar Siding relay record, the conductor's time card, and the relevant equipment ledgers. Her rhythm stayed clean despite the heat gathering beneath her collar. Cobb waited until she finished. "Daniel Stroud talked once before, according to you. Maybe he will talk again if you need another page." Lenora kept her eyes on the sounder. "I know there are 2 messages," she said. "Only one came from a living man. And you wrote the other?" "Yes." The direct answer took the sport from him. Cobb straightened. Wade did not defend her innocence because she had not claimed innocence. He waited until the return traffic began. Prescott acknowledged the request, then tapped a longer reply. Lenora copied every word. "Supervised access granted tomorrow morning. Originals Riemann and Company custody. Cedar Sitting relay book transferred for review. Company Cool has already requested same files." Lenora marked the receiving time and signed the copy. Only then did Wade speak to Cobb. "She is working." His voice stayed low. "Leave the counter." Cobb opened his mouth. Wade did not move closer. He simply waited. Cobb left. Mr. Purdy busied himself with a crate he had already opened twice. Ortega read the Prescott reply over Lenora's shoulder without touching it. "First mixed train leaves before dawn." "Vale's attorney will be there," Ruth said. Lenora folded the copy and handed it to Ortega. "Good." Wade studied her face. "Good? He cannot say later that he did not know which records we asked to see." Outside, a train whistle rolled across Juniper Wells and faded toward Prescott. Somewhere ahead of them, the false confession waited in Lenora's handwriting. Vale's counsel was already on the road to reach it first. The mixed train pulled away from Juniper Wells before sunrise with Orson Vale's attorney seated 3 rows ahead of Lenora. Vickery wore a dark traveling coat and held a leather case across his knees. He had boarded without greeting her, though his eyes had rested on Wade's bandaged temple, Ruth's document case, and Deputy Sheriff Ortega's coat long enough to count all 3. Wade sat beside the window. The first hard coupling jolt drove pain through his shoulder and tightened his mouth, but he said nothing. Lenora noticed him adjust, so the injured side faced the wall. "You can lie down when we reach Prescott," she said. "That sounds too much like an order." "It is advice." "Then I may consider it." "Consider quickly." Ruth sat across from them with the duplicate equipment inventory secured inside her case. Ortega occupied the bench near the stove, where he could watch both ends of the passenger car. Daniel's sealed warning remained under his coat. Outside, late May darkness thinned over the Arizona territory. The train stopped at cattle sidings, water towers, and one settlement no larger than a store and stock pen. 30 rail miles became several hours when freight had priority over people. At the second stop, Vickery turned in his seat. "Miss Bell, company records may not be removed from Prescott. We requested supervised access, not removal. You requested Cedar Siding's relay book. Its transfer was approved before your objection. Company counsel has the right to protect privileged materials," Ortega answered from behind them. "A false message tied to assault and stolen express property is not protected because your client dislikes the questions." Vickery looked at Wade. "And Mr. Stroud's presence." Wade kept his gaze on the passing rails. "My brother's name is in the book. That gives you no authority." "I did not claim any." Vickery turned forward again. Lenora watched Wade's reflection in the glass. 10 months earlier, he would have answered with anger. Now he had allowed the lack of authority to remain a fact rather than an insult. Prescott received them beneath a hard morning sun. Nathan Grier met them outside the express office near the courthouse square. He was a spare man with a gray mustache, a worn black coat, and no patience for ceremony. "The copybook is upstairs," he said. "The cedar siding volume arrived last night. Vickery requested both before dawn." "Has anyone opened them?" Lenora asked. "The archive clerk inspected the bindings in my presence. No pages have been removed." They climbed a narrow stair to a room lined with shelves and locked cabinets. Wade took the steps slowly. Lenora stayed near enough to catch him if the dizziness returned, but she did not reach unless he asked. At the top, Grier recorded every visitor's name and the time of entry. The archive clerk brought out the bound company copybook first and set it on a felt-covered table. Vickery stood opposite Lenora. "You may examine," he said. "You may not handle loose extracts." Grier gave him a dry look. "You are not conducting this review." The clerk opened the volume to the date of Daniel's death. Lenora recognized her own handwriting before the page lay flat. The letters leaned slightly right. The downstrokes were narrow from a pen nib Ephraim refused to replace. Beneath the station heading stood the message she had written 10 months earlier. "Have left post. Taking payroll south. Do not follow. Daniel Stroud. Received at Juniper Wells, 9:41 p.m." Ephraim Bell's initials approved the relay entry. The sight of her hand made the room smaller. She placed both palms against the table edge and forced herself to read every word. Vickery spoke first. "Is that your writing?" "Yes." "Did you enter it into the company book?" "Yes." "Did anyone hold your hand?" Wade moved behind her. Lenora answered before he could. "No." Vickery's expression sharpened. "Then the record is yours. The handwriting is mine." The message was relayed to the station. "My father ordered me to enter it. He approved it. You now claim it was false. I claim Daniel could not have sent it if he was already dead. We are here to establish the times." "Did you see the sender?" "No." "Did you hear the relay output?" "Yes." "Could the sender have been Daniel?" "I did not know then. I know the wording did not match the warning my father concealed." Vickery looked toward the clerk. "That is speculation." "No," Lenora said. "The warning exists under seal. Whether its times are reliable must be tested against the other records." Grier requested a witnessed extract. The clerk copied the false message, page number, time, Lenora's admission, and Ephraim's approving initials. The original remained in the bound volume. Next came the cedar siding relay book. Its pages were rougher, filled with route calls, weather interruptions, and delays. On the night Daniel died, one entry carried the East Spur office code, Daniel Stroud's private sign, and a sent time of note beneath it read, "Line Bussy South. Held for clear." Fort Juniper Wells, 9:18 p.m. Lenora exhaled slowly. The 11-minute gap had not been added inside the clock. Cedar siding carried the same route. "Independent record," Ortega said. Vickery leaned over the page. "An operator at Cedar could have altered this after the fact." "Then we ask who was on duty and whether the page sequence agrees with surrounding traffic," Grier replied. The archive clerk checked the duty roster. The Cedar operator had been a man named Hollis Trent, now working a northern division. His entries before and after Daniel's warning were continuous with no scraped ink or inserted page. Not conclusive alone, stronger together. The conductor's time card came last. It recorded an eastbound freight delayed after discovering a wrecked express wagon near East Spur at 9:11 p.m. Daniel had already left the key shack. He was found injured beside the service path and carried into the section room while someone rode for a doctor. No fixed telegraph instrument stood in that room. Lenora traced the sequence aloud. Daniel sent at 9:07. 4 minutes later the wreck was found. Cedar held the warning behind line traffic and forwarded it at 9:18. Wade stood very still. He sent before they struck him. "The records say he sent before the wreck was discovered," Lenora corrected. "We still need the doctor's entry." Grier had already sent a runner to the county record office. The reply had not arrived by noon. Outside, Prescott Square burned white beneath the sun. A newspaper boy spotted Wade's bandage and called across the street, "Dead thief's brother finds his lady accomplice." Another boy took up the cry. "Company woman writes one confession and hides another." Wade stepped from the archive doorway. Lenora caught his sleeve with 2 fingers. He stopped before she had to pull. "They do not know the times," he said. "Then give them the times." She faced the nearest reporter, not the boys. The true warning was sent at 9:07. The wreck was found at 9:11. The warning reached Juniper Wells at 9:18. The false confession arrived at 9:41. "Print judgment tomorrow after you read the death entry." The reporter lowered his pencil. "You admit writing the confession." "I admit writing the official copy." "Print that too." No denial could protect her now. Precision might. They returned to the archive after the midday heat eased. Wade descended the final uneven steps with one hand on the rail. At the last broken edge, he offered Lenora his hand. "You can manage," he said. "I know." She took it anyway. His palm closed around hers without pulling. They reached level ground. Lenora did not release him. Neither did Wade. They crossed the short distance to the boarding house courtyard still joined, until Ruth moved ahead to speak with the keeper. Lenora let go then. Beneath the cottonwood, Wade sat because the train and stairs had taken more from him than he wished to admit. 10 months ago, he said, if you had told me you copied the message under your father's order, I would have called it an excuse. That is why I did not tell you. You should have. Without Daniel's warning, I was only the woman whose hand made the lie official. Wade rubbed his thumb against the edge of the bench. I wanted someone alive to blame. Ephraim was dying. Vale was beyond my reach. You were standing behind the counter. That did not make me the truth. No. He lifted his face to hers. I should have asked. Lenora stood close enough to see the pale line of healing at his temple, and I should have spoken before I had perfect proof. Doubt is hard to carry alone. So is being hated. The answer left them with no easy mercy. Wade rose, slowly. He stopped an arm's length away, giving her room. His gaze dropped once to her mouth, then returned. Lenora felt the invitation and the danger of accepting it before the last record arrived. She turned her face aside. Wade stepped back at once. No, he answered. Not yet. Hooves struck the courtyard stones. A county runner dismounted with a sealed note for Nathan Greer. Greer arrived from the street, broke the seal in their presence, and read the certified entry twice. Then he handed it to Ortega. Daniel Stroud had been declared dead at 9:22 in the evening. The false confession had been transmitted 19 minutes later. 19 minutes, Wade said. The words came out level, but his hand closed around the back of the courtyard bench until the knuckles blanched. Nathan Greer laid the certified death entry beside the witnessed extracts from the Prescott copybook, the Cedar Siding relay book, and the conductor's time card. 4 records from 4 hands. Together they left little room for comfort. Daniel sent the genuine warning from East Spur at 9:07, Greer said. The wrecked wagon and Daniel were found at 9:11. Cedar Siding forwarded the delayed warning to Juniper Wells at 9:18. The doctor declared Daniel dead at 9:22. The confession in his name entered the line at 9:41. Ruth Danner stood near the boarding house parlor window, one hand resting on her document case. Deputy Sheriff Ortega remained beside the door. Mr. Vickery had followed them from the archive after learning the doctor's record had arrived. Though his earlier confidence no longer filled the room. A death entry proves only when the doctor made his declaration, Vickery said. The later message might have been sent earlier and held in relay. Lenora turned toward him. Then the sending office and relay delay should appear somewhere in the route record. Unless omitted. By whom? Vickery's mouth tightened. Greer tapped the false entry. The 9:41 message carries no origin office and no legitimate relay notation. It appears at Juniper Wells as though Daniel sent it directly. Clerical errors happen, Vickery said. So does fraud, Ortega answered. Neither is proved merely because it is possible. Lenora stepped to the table. The records prove Daniel could not have originated that confession at 9:41. They do not yet prove who sent it, where the line was entered, or who held the missing portable key. Wade turned toward her. Daniel named Keel. Daniel warned that Keel was using a spur key. He did not tell us where the instrument went after his death. The inventory says it was issued to Keel and never properly returned. That narrows the road. It does not finish it. Wade moved away from the bench. The room swayed under him before he completed 3 steps. He caught the mantel with his uninjured hand and waited for the dizziness to pass. Lenora noticed Vickery notice it. She moved between them without appearing to. "My brother sent a warning before they struck him," Wade said. "Then someone waited until he was dead and made him confess." "Yes, and my answer is still to wait. Your answer is to prove which living man used his name." Wade's eyes held hers. Grief had stripped them of every easier emotion. "I can find Keel before supper." "You can frighten him before supper." "He already knows we are asking. He does not know which records survived or whether we found the key. He may run. If you frighten him before we find the key, Daniel will be innocent and still unproved." The sentence stopped him, not because it eased his anger, because it gave the anger a cost. Wade turned toward the table. Daniel's true warning lay sealed in Ortega's custody. The false confession remained in the Prescott archive. The relay record and time card stood beside the doctor's entry as witnessed extracts. Nothing in that room could place the portable key in Keel's hand. Not yet. Vickery gathered his papers. "My client will answer formal questions through company counsel." Ruth spoke without turning from the window. "Then advise him not to move records before those questions arrive." Vickery ignored her. At the door, he looked back at Lenora. "You have admitted entering the confession." "Yes, and your father approved it." "Yes. Whatever else you prove, that does not disappear." Lenora met the threat cleanly. "I did not ask it to." Vickery left. Ortega waited until his footsteps faded down the hall. "Vale will hear the death time before dark. Then he may move the maintenance ledgers," Greer said. "I will file written requests for preservation with the company's Prescott office and the county clerk. That will not stop a determined man, but it will make removal harder to explain." Ruth closed her document case. "What of Ephraim?" Wade asked. No one answered at once. He looked at Lenora. "Did your father write the false message himself?" "No, I heard the relay output. I wrote what came over the line." "But he knew it contradicted Daniel's warning." "Yes, and ordered you to enter." "Yes." Her voice held, though every answer carried her father farther from the man she had once defended. "He concealed Daniel's true slip inside the clock. Then he signed beneath the false entry because Vale pressed him, and because he was afraid of what exposure would cost." "That is not the same as innocence." "No. And not the whole plot." "No. He did not create the false sender or the missing key. He chose to make their lie official." Wade absorbed that without giving Ephraim more blame than the evidence allowed. "Why did you obey?" Lenora looked down at the copybook extract bearing her handwriting. "Because he was my father. Because Vale stood beyond the counter. Because I had spent years being told a junior operator entered what the senior operator approved. Because refusing would have required me to trust my own doubt more than both men in the room." She lifted her eyes. "None of that makes the entry less mine." Wade's jaw tightened. "You thought something was wrong." "Yes. And stayed silent." "Yes. I judged you for that." "You had reason." "I made the reason larger than the truth." He looked toward Daniel's sealed warning inside Ortega's coat. "I wanted everyone near that station to carry what happened to him. You were nearest." Lenora did not offer forgiveness. It was not time. Greer gathered the extracts for return to secure custody. Ortega went with him. Ruth left to send a telegram to Cinderwash and arrange rooms for another night. By late afternoon, the boarding house courtyard stood empty, except for Lenora and Wade beneath the cottonwood. Dust hung above the street beyond the wall. A freight wagon rattled toward the square. Wade sat because the train, stairs, and hours upright had taken more from him than pride wished to admit. Lenora remained standing at first. "Do you think my father deserves forgiveness?" she asked. Wade rubbed one thumb along the brim of his hat. "Do you?" "I do not know." "Then do not let anyone demand an answer before you have one." Lenora studied him. "Not even you?" "Especially not me." "You hated him." "I may still." "And me?" Wade looked up. "I hated the place where my anger landed. That was not a declaration of innocence or love. It was more honest." Lenora sat beside him, leaving a narrow space between their shoulders. "I do not know what to do with my father's late confession," she said. "He preserved the warning. He also buried it long enough for Daniel to be called a thief. You can grieve the man and condemn the act. People prefer one answer. People preferred Daniel guilty. Preference did not make it true." Lenora lowered her gaze to Wade's shirt front. His breathing remained steady beneath the cloth. She placed her palm against the center of his chest. The contact was deliberate. Wade did not move closer. His eyes searched her face once, then settled. Lenora. Her name carried a question, not a claim. "Do you want me closer?" She could still remove her hand. He would let her. That certainty made the answer hers. Yes. Wade leaned in slowly, giving her time to change the word. Their lips met once. Brief, warm, more tender than she had expected from a man built around restraint. Lenora felt his breath catch, then steady beneath her palm. Wade did not deepen the kiss. He did not reach for her waist. When she drew back, he stopped with her. The space between them no longer felt empty. It felt chosen. "I will wait," he said. "For the key? For proof? For you? For whatever answer you give your father." Lenora removed her hand. "Then keep that promise." "I will." Night settled over Prescott by the time Lenora retired. Wade remained awake at the boarding house window, telling himself the headache was the reason. Across the street, Barton Keel emerged from the livery's side gate with a brown satchel over one shoulder. He looked north, then south, before leading a saddled horse toward the freight yard. Wade reached for his hat. He did not wake Lenora. He did not tell Ruth. He stepped into the night and followed. Wade followed Barton Keel through the livery's side gate and into a freight yard crowded with empty wagons, stacked harness, and shadows deep enough to hide a second man. Keel did not turn until he reached the far wall. "You limp louder than you think, Stroud." Wade stopped beneath a hanging lantern. The walk from the boarding house had brought the headache back, hard enough to blur the edges of the yard. But he kept his stance square. Daniel's confession came after he died. Keel's right hand shifted from his coat pocket to rest near his belt. "That's so? 19 minutes after. Then I suppose the company will correct its books." "You used his sign." Keel gave a short laugh. "Half the line knew Daniel's sign, not the private one. And Bell told you all this after kissing you good night." Wade took one step closer. "She told me the record survived. The mistake was small." Keel's face made it large. Recognition passed through his eyes before contempt covered it. "So Ephraim kept more than one page." Wade said nothing. Too late. Keel now knew the hidden warning had been found and the timing contradiction confirmed. "Where is the portable key?" Wade asked. "You came to Prescott with no warrant, no deputy, and a head wound, then followed me into a dark yard to ask for company property. Answer, or what?" Keel leaned against the wall as if Wade amused him. "You strike me behind a livery and prove every story told about the Stroud brothers." Wade's hand tightened. "Daniel warned the line about you. You made him a thief after he was dead." "Daniel made himself troublesome before anyone made him anything." Keel's voice remained low. He saw a pouch where he should have seen an order. He touched a key that was none of his concern. Men die every day from mistaking curiosity for courage. Wade crossed the distance and caught Keel by the front of his coat. The lantern swung above them. Keel's shoulder struck timber. Wade's fist drew back. One blow would be easy, easier than 10 months of Daniel's name spoken with contempt, easier than admitting Lenora had asked him to wait, and he had lasted only until darkness. Keel watched the raised fist and smiled. "She told you not to come." Wade held him there. "You know nothing about her. I know she has spent her life taking orders from men with stronger names. First Ephraim, then Vale, now you." The words found the weakest place because Wade had already made them partly true. He had promised Lenora that proof would come before anger. Then he had chosen anger the instant she could not see him. Wade lowered his fist. He released Keel's coat. "This is not finished." Keel straightened the wrinkled cloth. "No, now it has begun again." He kicked a loose board beside the wall. A tethered horse on the other side jerked, pulling the narrow gate open. Keel slipped through the gap and ran toward the freight track. Wade followed 3 strides before dizziness struck. The yard tilted. He caught a wagon wheel and held on, while darkness narrowed his sight. By the time his balance returned, hoofbeats were already moving north. He had frightened Keel, exposed the surviving timeline, and recovered nothing. The promise he had made Lenora lay broken before dawn. By breakfast, the damage had outrun him. A company notice reached Prescott before 8, stating that the Juniper Wells line had been disconnected under regional authority for immediate equipment inspection. Another message reported that the old spur maintenance books had been removed from the local route office and transferred to an unnamed company location. Mateo entered the boarding house dining room with dust on his coat and anger sharpened across his face. "Someone searched my room," he said. "Mattress cut. Tool chest emptied. Papers gone." Ruth set down her coffee. "The equipment inventory? Still with you. They wanted my line sketches and the notes from East Spur." Ortega rose from the table. "Anything else?" "The line locker near the Prescott repair shed was emptied before sunrise. I checked it because Keel once used it for field equipment. No key, no relay coil, nothing." Lenora turned toward Wade. He had not touched his breakfast. The healing cut at his temple looked pale above a face gone still with shame. "What did you do?" she asked. Wade did not delay. "I followed Keel." Ruth closed her eyes once. Mateo swore beneath his breath. "Where?" Lenora asked. "Behind the livery." "What did you tell him?" "That Daniel's confession came 19 minutes after his death. I said the record survived." "Did you tell him about the hidden warning?" "Not directly." He understood. Wade held her gaze. "Yes." Lenora rose. Her chair scraped against the floorboards. "You promised to wait for proof." "I know. You waited only until I wasn't watching." No one moved. Wade stood more slowly. He was within reach. Lenora's voice sharpened. So was the truth. He took the answer without turning his grief into defense. "I made the wrong choice. You made the choice you wanted and left the cost for everyone else." "Yes." The line is cut. The maintenance books are gone. Mateo's room was searched. The locker that may have held the key is empty. She paused. "We have not finished losing what your anger warned them to hide." Wade took one step toward her, then stopped when she moved back. "Do not." He let his hands fall to his sides. "I won't. I need distance. You have it." Lenora waited, perhaps expecting another argument. Wade gave none. He left the room because she had asked him to. Near noon, Orson Vale arrived at the boarding house in a dark coat, too formal for the heat. He requested Lenora by name and waited in the front parlor with a folded document across his knee. Ruth remained beside the window. Wade stayed in the hall beyond the open door, far enough not to intrude and close enough to hear only the rise and fall of voices. Vale stood as Lenora entered. "Miss Bell, the company has been forced into an unpleasant position. You did not ride from Juniper Wells to discuss discomfort." He placed the paper on the table. "Your suspension can be withdrawn, your station privileges restored, no inquiry into your absence, no complaint regarding the false entry." Lenora did not touch it. "In exchange?" "A signed statement explaining that Ephraim Bell invented the East Spur origin and added the 9-7 and 9-18 notations after Daniel Stroud's death." Ruth's fingers tightened against the chair arm. Lenora remained still. "You want me to say my father forged the genuine warning. I want you to acknowledge what the evidence permits. The Cedar Siding relay book independently carries the same times. Company records can be mistaken. Then your affidavit should accuse Cedar Siding, too." Vale's expression cooled. "Your father concealed the slip. You copied the contradictory confession. No reasonable inquiry will treat either Bell as reliable. Then the inquiry can rely on the conductor, the doctor, the relay operator, and the missing equipment inventory. The maintenance books are no longer available locally because you removed them this morning, because the station is under review." Lenora finally lifted the affidavit. Vale's pen lay beside it. "Sign and you return to work." "No. Refuse and Juniper Wells closes. The station will be dismantled tomorrow. No express company on this route will employ an operator accused of falsifying messages. Then I will work somewhere that asks which message was false before deciding who falsified it. There may be nowhere." Lenora tore the paper once through the signature line. "There is still no." Vale's mouth hardened. "The station is uneconomic. Removal begins at sunrise." He left without asking for the torn pages. Ruth collected both halves, placed them together inside her document case, and closed the latch. She would preserve the threat rather than burn it. Lenora stepped into the hall. Wade stood against the far wall. He did not approach. She passed him without touching his sleeve. He stayed where she had put him. Mateo waited near the front door with a folded scrap in his hand. He slipped it to Lenora as Vale's carriage rolled away. "I checked one thing before they searched my room," he said. Lenora unfolded the note beneath the stair lamp. 5 words were written in block capitals. "The old spur can still carry crank." Beneath them, Mateo had added, "One night only." Lenora read Mateo's note twice, folded it along the old crease, and looked toward the boarding-house door through which Vale had just departed. "How long will the spur hold?" she asked. "Until tomorrow night if no one loads the line," Mateo said. "Less if Vale's crew starts pulling wire at sunrise." "Can an unauthorized key still enter through cinder cut? If the branch has not been severed there, then we do not try to catch Keel yet." Mateo frowned. "What do we try? We prove the old spur is still being used. Learn which direction the current enters and leave 3 written copies no one man can remove." Ruth closed her document case over the torn affidavit. "Prescott, Cedar Siding, and Juniper Wells." "Yes." Lenora turned toward Ortega. "Can you witness the station transmission and record who enters?" "I can." Mateo traces the line north. Ruth remains with the message copies. Wade holds the freight room door. Wade stood at the far end of the hall where she had left him. He did not step closer. "You have not asked whether I agree." "I am asking. Now, what happens if Keel appears? You remain at the station. If he runs, you remain at the station. If Mateo signals trouble, Ortega and I decide who moves." Wade absorbed each condition. "Agreed." Lenora shook her head. "That is not enough." Ruth and Mateo moved toward the dining room without being told. Ortega followed, leaving the hall to them. Wade waited. Lenora kept several feet between them. "You said you were sorry." "I was. I need to know what you are sorry for." The answer took no searching. "I wanted Keel in my reach more than I wanted your plan to live." Wade's voice stayed low. "I told myself I was acting before the records disappeared. I was only choosing my anger over the work you had built." Lenora held his gaze. "And when you disagree with me tomorrow, I say so before we begin. If I agree to the plan, I keep my place. Even if he is 10 steps away." Wade's jaw tightened. "Especially then, you may watch him escape. Then I watch." The words cost him. That was why she believed he understood them. "You stay at the freight room door," Lenora said. "I stay. You do not draw unless someone enters with a weapon or Ortega orders it." "Agreed. You do not leave because grief tells you waiting is weakness." Wade gave one slow nod. "Agreed." Lenora crossed the space between them and put her arms around him. The embrace was deliberate, not forgiving everything and not pretending the first kiss had survived his choice untouched. Wade did not close his arms until she leaned against him. Then he held her with care for the bruised shoulder and no pressure to remain. His cheek rested near her hair. "This is trust enough for the work," she said. "I know. Do not spend it twice." "I will not." She stepped back before the embrace could become a kiss. At dawn, the mixed train carried them from Prescott toward Juniper Wells. Ortega sent written instructions ahead through Cedar Siding, asking both the Cedar operator and the Prescott archive operator to copy every mark placed on the circuit after the Juniper Wells test began. Neither office was to answer any cancellation, unless Lenora signed it with the proper station call. Wade traveled by the window again. The long ride tightened his shoulder, but he did not complain or use pain to win back closeness. Lenora spent the journey writing the test message. It could not mention payroll or Daniel. That would reveal too much. It needed only to invite interference from someone desperate to keep Juniper Wells silent. By late afternoon, they reached the Sising under a hard white sky. Vale's closure notice remained nailed beside the station door. Ortega unlocked the building under his authority and wrote each person's name and entry time in his notebook. The clock still stood stopped above the counter at 3:58, its lower panel secure after Mateo's repair. White inventory tags hung from the sounder, relay box, battery jars, and freight scale. Mateo removed no tagged equipment. He worked beneath the counter instead, connecting the old spur through a temporary line and a small battery he had brought from Prescott. The first click sounded thin. The second carried. "One short test," he said. "Then the current may fade." Lenora sat behind the key she had once surrendered. Ruth placed 3 blank message forms beside her and recorded the station time. Ortega took the rear door. Wade stood at the freight room entrance with both hands empty and his revolver holstered. Lenora tested the official station call. Prescott acknowledged. Cedar Siding followed. She sent the prepared message. Juniper, Kirkett, inspection. Ack. Nottage. Both offices answered with their proper calls. The line went still. Mateo slipped outside with his tools and followed the North Poles on horseback. He would send 1 brief signal if current entered the spur, 2 if he found the direction, and 3 if he needed Ortega. Lenora watched the brass arm. Heat gathered under the station roof. Dust moved along the platform in pale sheets. Wade did not leave the freight room door. 1 minute passed, then 2. The sounder clicked without Lenora touching the key. A stranger had entered the circuit. Juniper test canceled by regional order. The sender used Vale's office service call, not Daniel's sign. Smarter, less theatrical. The first letters came crowded. At the R in regional, the sender broke the stroke, paused, then broke it again. Keel's habit. Lenora copied every mark. Consistent with Keel, she said. Not identification. Ruth wrote the receiving time. Prescott tapped that it had copied the unauthorized order. Cedar Siding answered the same. 3 records. 1 intrusion. Lenora did not respond to the cancellation. The unauthorized sender tried again. Juniper equipment to Rimmon silent. This time the R carried the same double hesitation. Then the circuit went dead before the message could be signed. Wade's body tightened near the door. He looked toward Lenora, not outside, asked without speaking. She raised one hand. Stay. He stayed. Mateo should have sent a signal by then. None came. Ortega waited half a minute, then another. How far before his first checkpoint? Less than a mile, Lenora said. He should have reported. Ruth folded the copied messages and placed them beneath the station ledger. What do you need? You stay with these. No one removes them. Prescott and Cedar already hold their own copies. Lenora stood. Wade remained in place until she faced him. Do I move? He asked. With us. Same conditions. Agreed. They rode north along the telegraph line with Ortega leading, Lenora behind him, and Wade last. The sinking sun cast the poles in long black strokes across the high desert. At each one, Ortega checked the ground while Lenora studied the wire. 5 miles from Juniper Wells, near the bend toward Cindercut, they found Mateo's horse tied badly to a scrub oak. One stirrup hung backward. His tool roll was gone. Ortega dismounted first. No blood, he said after checking the saddle. Wade remained mounted until Lenora gave him a nod. On the ground below the pole, 2 sets of boot prints left the road. One belonged to Mateo. She recognized the worn outside edge of his right heel from the station platform. The second set ran deeper and close behind, as if another man had forced him forward. No third trail joined them. One captor, Ortega said. Keel may have come alone. Lenora looked toward the broken ground ahead. The prints led east into the cut where the abandoned section house stood below the rail grade. Wade's hand rested near his holster, but he did not draw. Do we follow? He asked. Not I will. Not stay here. He waited for the answer. Ortega moved toward the nearest pole and stopped. A small object had been driven into the weathered wood at shoulder height. Mateo's pocket knife. Its open blade pointed toward the abandoned section house at Cindercut. Mateo's knife gave them the only direction they had. Ortega pulled it from the telegraph pole, folded the blade, and slipped it into his coat. He left it where we would find it, Lenora said. Then he was conscious when they took him. Wade studied the 2 lines of footprints entering the cut. Mateo's worn right heel marked one trail. The second stayed close behind, pressing deeper where the ground sloped. One man forced him forward, Wade said. One that walked, Ortega answered. He pointed toward a separate set of horse tracks curving behind the rocks. Keel may have ridden ahead, dismounted, then brought the horse around later. The abandoned section house stood below the rail grade, its boards bleached by years of sun. A broken service pit ran beside the rear wall where repairmen had once worked beneath freight equipment. Most of the plank cover had rotted away. One wrong step could drop a man 6 feet onto stone. Lenora dismounted behind a juniper and tied her mare. Wade moved toward the building. Wait, she said. He stopped without argument. Ortega enters first. I need you close enough to reach Mateo if he cannot walk. Where do you want yourself? Where I can see the wire. Wade followed the fresh line running from the nearest pole into the section house roof. Then stay behind my shoulder until we know who is inside. Behind your shoulder is not outside the plan. I know. Ortega approached the door from the hinge side, revolver low against his leg. He tested the latch, unlocked. The door opened with a dry scrape. Heat, dust, and the sharp mineral smell of battery jars drifted out. Yavapai County Deputy Sheriff, Ortega called. Come out with your hands clear. No answer. A faint movement sounded from the back room. Mateo? Lenora called. A strained voice answered, still alive. Ortega entered first. Wade followed. Lenora came behind them, keeping the wall at her left and the wire in sight. The front chamber held a broken desk, 2 battery jars, a relay mounted on a crate, and coils of insulated wire. Fresh copper shone where cloth covering had been stripped away. A second line ran beneath the rear sill. Ortega opened the inner door. Mateo Ruiz sat against the wall with his wrists tied behind him and rope around his ankles. One side of his face was bruised. His lower lip had split, but his eyes were clear. You took your time, he said. Lenora knelt beside him. Did he strike your head? Once. Not hard enough to make me agreeable. Can you breathe without sharp pain? Mostly. Mostly is not yes. Then no. Wade cut the rope at Mateo's ankles. Ortega loosened the knots at his wrists and examined the abrasions without disturbing more than necessary. Lenora gave Mateo water in small amounts. He drank, stopped when she told him, then flexed his hands. Keel? Ortega asked. Mateo nodded toward the rear wall. He took me from the pole line, came up behind me with a pistol, made me walk here. Alone. His horse was tied beyond the cut. He left 10 minutes ago to move it and check the freight spur. The 2 boot trails now made sense. Mateo and Keel. The horse tracks belonged to the same captor. Portable key, Lenora asked, in a brown satchel. Relay coil, too. Wade crossed to the front room and crouched beside a loose floorboard. He did not lift it with his hand. He used the tip of his pocket knife and glanced toward Ortega. The deputy nodded. Beneath the board lay cut express pouch tags bundled with twine, several wax fragments, and a wooden-handled metal seal wrapped in oilcloth. Ortega moved closer. No one touches it. He opened his notebook and began describing the objects in place. Lenora leaned near enough to read the stamped face without making contact. Company express mark, she said. A stolen seal could close replacement pouches after the originals were opened. Mateo shifted against the wall and winced. Keel brought that handle through my shop 3 months ago. Said the company wanted it repaired. Did you see the mark? Ortega asked. Not then. It was wrapped. Do not add what you did not see, Lenora said. Mateo gave her a tired nod. I saw the wrapped handle. I cannot swear it was this seal. Another board hid routing forms, and a narrow company directive. Ortega lifted the paper by its edge after recording its position. The heading belonged to Vale's regional office. Near the bottom were initials that resembled Orson Vale's approval mark. The directive ordered high-value express pouches diverted through North Spur under emergency authority, then returned to the main line without ordinary station entry. Can you identify those initials? Ortega asked Lenora. They resemble Vale's. Mr. Harrow or the Prescott office must authenticate them. And the root language? Regional office form, not proof of the signer by itself. Wade found a line of figures matching pouch numbers from older cinder-wash delays. These are not cattle tallies. No, Lenora said. They are root references. Mateo pushed himself higher against the wall. The tap enters through that battery. He pointed with his chin. A man can break the circuit, send an order, then restore the line before the fixed office records anything but the received words. The system no longer depended on guesswork. Portable key, hidden relay, stolen seal root forms, a signed directive that appeared to lead back to Vale's office. Still, one thing remained outside their reach, the key itself. A board creaked behind them. Wade rose too quickly. Pain flashed across his face, and he steadied himself against the doorframe. Ortega turned with his revolver raised. Bart Keel stood in the rear entrance, brown satchel over one shoulder and a short-barreled pistol in his right hand. Step away from the papers, he said. His eyes moved across the room and stopped on Mateo. You should have kept your knife. Mateo gave a rough smile. You should have checked the pole. Keel's pistol shifted toward him. Ortega held his own weapon steady. Drop it. You have no warrant for company property. I have a bound man, stolen tags, a concealed telegraph circuit, and a company seal under the floor. You have scraps in an abandoned house." Lenora watched the satchel. Its flap stood partly open. Metal knocked against metal when Keel moved. The compact field key was inside. "And you have the missing instrument," she said. Keel's gaze cut to her. "You hear too much. Not enough. That is why Deputy Ortega will take the satchel." Keel backed toward the open service door. Wade's hand rested near his holster but did not draw. "Daniel made the same mistake," Keel said. "He thought sending one message would save him." Wade's face hardened. It saved the truth. 10 months late. Mateo tried to stand using the wall. His legs failed. Keel seized him by the shirt front before Ortega could close the distance and dragged him toward the service pit. Mateo's weakened feet scraped over the boards. "Let me leave," Keel said, "or he goes down." Ortega shifted left, seeking a clear angle. Keel kept Mateo between them. Lenora saw the rotten plank beneath Mateo's heel bend. "Mateo, do not fight him," she said. Keel pulled him backward. The plank split. Mateo dropped toward the open pit. Wade moved, not toward Keel, toward Mateo. He caught Mateo beneath both arms as the last board gave way. The sudden weight drove Wade to one knee and wrenched his bruised shoulder. Keel released Mateo and ran. Ortega lunged after him. Keel fired once into the ceiling. Dry splinters fell. The shot struck no one, but the horses outside jerked against their reins. Wade could have released Mateo and joined the pursuit. Keel was only a few strides beyond the door. The portable key was leaving with him. Wade tightened his hold instead. "I have you," he said. Mateo's boots struck the pit wall. Lenora braced one foot against solid flooring, grabbed the back of Mateo's coat, and pulled with Wade. Together they dragged him onto the remaining boards. By the time Ortega reached the rear door, Keel had mounted. The deputy raised his revolver, then lowered it. A shot through frightened horses and broken ground risked hitting anyone beyond the cut. Hoofbeats tore east along the rail grade. The brown satchel went with Keel. So did the unique portable key and relay coil. Wade stayed beside Mateo until the injured man could move both legs and answer without losing breath. Only then did he glance toward the empty doorway. Lenora saw what the choice had cost him. "Can you feel your feet?" she asked Mateo. He bent one knee, then the other. "They are complaining. That is usually a good sign." Ortega returned and began a formal scene list. Lenora wrote as he named each item: single stolen company seal, pouch tags, routing forms, battery jars, hidden relay, illegal wire connection, Vale office directive, broken floorboards, rope bindings, bullet mark in, ceiling. Nothing was removed until location and condition had been recorded. Mateo gave his account of the abduction. He did not claim to know whether Vale had ordered it. He stated only what Keel had done and what equipment he had seen. At the rear sill, Lenora noticed the fresh branch wire did not run back toward the old spur. It bent east beneath the dust. "Mateo, where does that line go?" He leaned forward despite the pain. "Toward Juniper Wells freight spur." Ortega opened the next day route form. An eastbound payroll pouch was due through Juniper Wells during Vale's company inquiry. Beside the route number stood the same emergency code written on the signed directive. Lenora understood the final move. Vale closes the station, calls the route unsafe, then diverts one more pouch under emergency authority. Wade followed her reasoning. Keel has to use the key again, and this time the company witnesses it while Ortega catches the instrument connected. Mateo nodded toward the fresh branch. "If the wire holds, will it?" Lenora asked. "For one more message." Ortega sealed the directive and smaller papers separately, then wrapped the single company seal for transfer. The portable key remained beyond them, but everything Keel needed to use it pointed toward tomorrow morning. Wade sat against the wall, pale from strain, one hand pressed to his shoulder. Lenora crossed to him. She rested her forehead against his. He went still and left his hands where they were. "You kept your place," she said. Mateo was falling. Keel was escaping. "I know." Wade's breath warmed her cheek. "I wanted to follow, but you did not." Lenora stayed close for one steady breath, then lifted her head. Trust had returned through the choice he made, while the man he hated was still within reach. Far west of Cinder Cut, a train whistle carried over the high desert. The payroll run was already moving toward Juniper Wells. The payroll train was less than an hour from Juniper Wells when Lenora took her place behind the station key. The room held more witnesses than customers, yet the only sound was the faint tick of cooling metal from the stove and Mateo Ruiz's cane settling against the floorboards. Mr. Harrow, the senior express superintendent from Prescott, stood beside Nathan Grier at the message desk. The company archive operator occupied the bench beneath the stopped clock. Ruth Danner sat near the freight ledger, with the 3 copied forms from the previous day's circuit test locked inside her document case. 2 ranch representatives waited along the wall because stolen and delayed pouches had touched their accounts. Deputy Sheriff Tomas Ortega stood near the rear door, his notebook open. Mateo sat beside the window with his ribs bound beneath a clean shirt, one side of his face still bruised from cinder cut. Wade held the freight room entrance where Lenora had placed him. His revolver remained holstered. The rescue had aggravated his shoulder, and fatigue showed in the way he kept his weight off that side, but his hands were empty. Orson Vale stood across the room in a dark coat, composed enough to appear insulted rather than threatened. "This proceeding has no lawful standing," he said. Harrow did not raise his voice. "It is a company inquiry into falsified records and stolen express property. Deputy Ortega's presence concerns the rest. And Miss Bell is conducting it?" "Miss Bell understands this circuit better than anyone in the room." Vale's gaze moved to Lenora. "She also admits writing Daniel Stroud's confession." "I entered the official copy," Lenora said, "after my father ordered it and approved the false relay. That is in the record." She did not ask the admission to protect her. It no longer needed to. Grier laid 4 witnessed extracts on the desk. "The timeline first," he said. "Daniel Stroud sent a genuine warning from Eastspur at 9:07. A wrecked express wagon and Daniel were found at 9:11. Cedar Siding forwarded the delayed warning to Juniper Wells at 9:18. The doctor declared Daniel dead at 9:22. A confession in Daniel's name entered the line at 9:41. Vale gave a faint shrug. "A copied slip hidden by Ephraim Bell and a relay book handled by distant clerks. Which is why the timeline is not standing alone," Lenora said. Ortega removed the packet recovered at Cindercut and opened only the outer evidence wrapping. He did not place the original items into Vale's reach. Harrow examined the copied directive first. The heading bore Vale's regional office mark. The lower corner carried his initials. "Are these yours?" Grier asked. Vale barely glanced at the page. "They resemble mine." That was not the question. Office clerks imitate approval marks every day. Harrow took out a second file from Prescott and compared several route orders. The initials match Mr. Vale's approved directives in stroke, spacing, and placement. The emergency routing phrase is one his office alone was authorized to use. Vale's expression tightened. "Ugarized language is not a confession." "No," Lenora said. "The route number matters more." She pointed to the number written beside the North Spur diversion on the Cindercut directive. The same number appeared on 3 older pouch tags recovered beneath the floorboards and on 2 delayed transfer notices from Cinder Wash. "That route number does not belong to North Spur," Harrow said. "It belongs to the eastbound payroll transfer scheduled through Juniper Wells this morning." Ruth leaned forward. "The one Vale ordered moved under emergency authority." "The order was never entered into the station book," Lenora said, "because the station was closed before it could be challenged." Vale looked toward the platform windows. Far down the track a train whistle sounded. "You have scraps, old tags, and a damaged line. None of it proves who entered the circuit." "That is the remaining question," Lenora said. She turned to Harrow. "May I send the authorized instruction?" He nodded. Prescott's operator was waiting at the other end. Cedar Siding had also been told to copy every mark. Lenora set her fingers on the key. The brass felt familiar beneath them despite the days away. She sent slowly enough for every witness to follow the clerk's written copy. "Eastbound payroll push to transfer at Juniper Wells Platform. Conductor to deliver to Offor Express agent. Number 417. She signed with the proper station call and marked the time. Prescott acknowledged. Cedar Siding acknowledged. The line fell quiet. No one moved. The train whistle came again, closer now. Vale kept his eyes on the window. Wade kept his eyes on Vale. Half a minute passed. Then the sounder clicked without Lenora touching the key. An unauthorized current had entered the circuit. Hold payroll at North Spur Regional Inspection. Moot 47. The sender used Vale's neutral service call, not Daniel's sign. Lenora heard the crowded opening strokes. At the R in Regional, the hand broke once, paused, then broke again. Keel's habit. She copied it but did not name him. Out traffic, she said. Same route number as the cinder cut directive. Prescott tapped that it had copied the interruption. Cedar siding followed. 3 independent records. The unauthorized sender began again. Do not enter Juniper platform. Hold for. The line stopped mid-word. The brass arm fell still. Ortega had disconnected the portable key at the freight spur junction. A shout rose outside. Mateo pushed himself halfway upright. Ruth put one hand on his shoulder. You promised no fighting. I am not fighting. He reached for the cane. I am pointing if he runs. Ortega appeared through the rear door less than a minute later. Barton Keel walked ahead of him with both hands raised. A brown satchel hung open at his side. The unique portable field key lay inside beside the missing relay coil. A length of wire still trailed from the key's binding post. Caught him at the junction box, Ortega said. Instrument was connected and carrying current. Keel's face had lost its practiced contempt. Vale gave the route. Vale turned sharply. Be silent. The words were not a confession, but every person in the station heard where fear had landed. Ortega took the satchel and placed it on the freight scale without removing the contents. He listed the field key, relay coil, routing sheet, and 3 pouch tags. Each tag carried numbers corresponding to the cinder-cut records. Harrow examined the folded routing sheet after Ortega unfolded it. Vale's office initials appeared beside Route 417. You were carrying this while connected to the line, Harrow said. Keel said nothing. Vale moved toward the platform door. Wade stepped into his path. He did not touch Vale. Stand aside, Vale ordered. Wade remained where Lenora had placed him. The company superintendent is behind you. You are a ranch hand with an injured shoulder. Foreman, your brother died because he mistook a telegraph message for courage. Wade's face went hard. His right hand began to move toward his holster, then stopped before it touched leather. He lowered it fully to his side. The choice was visible. You don't get to use Daniel twice. Vale shoved Wade's bruised shoulder. Pain crossed Wade's face, but he absorbed the blow without returning it. Ortega crossed the room and took Vale by the arm. Orson Vale, you will come before the Justice of the Peace for preliminary examination concerning conspiracy to defraud the Express Company, falsification of company records, and direction of unauthorized routing. Vale twisted free enough to face him. On what authority? Mine to take you into custody. The justice decides whether you remain there. Ortega turned to Keel. Barton Keel, you are held for tampering with a company telegraph circuit, possession of stolen company equipment, assault on Wade Stroud, unlawful detention of Mateo Ruiz, and suspected express theft. Vale looked toward Harrow. You cannot permit this. Harrow removed Vale's company badge. You no longer speak for the route. Steam pressed against the windows as the payroll train braked beside the platform. Harrow ordered the pouch held under dual signature inside Juniper Wells until the company inquiry concluded. He also ordered all station equipment, message books, route records, and inventory sheets preserved. Daniel Stroud's theft designation is withdrawn pending written correction, he said. Miss Bell's suspension is also withdrawn pending formal appointment review. No one applauded. The room did not need a performance. Hiram Cobb stood outside the window with his hat in his hands. He had mocked Lenora at the general store 2 days earlier. Now he entered carrying a freight form and waited at her side of the counter, rather than asking Harrow or the archive clerk to approve it.
Miss Bell, he said, when you have time.
The title was not an apology. The waiting was. A Prescott reporter pushed through the station door with a pencil ready. Does this prove Vale killed Daniel Stroud? No, Lenora said. It proves Daniel sent a warning before the wreck. It proves the later confession came after his death. It proves Barton Keel possessed the missing field key and used it today to divert Route 417. It proves the same route number appears on a directive from Vale's office and on recovered pouch records. Print what is proved. Mark the rest as allegation. The reporter wrote every word. By late afternoon, the station had emptied into custody receipts, guarded evidence, company orders, and the ordinary confusion of a delayed train. Ruth remained with Harrow. Mateo allowed Ortega's deputy to help him into a wagon. Lenora stepped into the freight room and closed the door halfway. Her hands began to shake only after no one needed them steady. Wade entered but stayed near the wall. "You kept your place," she said. "Where you put me. Even when Vale pushed you, especially then, and when Keel came through the door, Ortega had him." Wade removed his hat. Dust marked his sleeve where Vale had struck the injured shoulder. "I heard you before I believed you," he said. "Today everyone else had to hear the proof." Lenora crossed the room. She took the front of his coat in both hands and drew him toward her. Wade paused close enough for refusal to remain possible. She closed the remaining distance. Their kiss carried no hesitation and no claim beyond what they both chose. Wade's hand settled at her waist, only after she leaned into him. The contact deepened, warm and restrained at once, until the fear and anger of the last 12 days gave Wade a relief neither of them had earned alone. When Lenora drew back, Wade did not follow. His forehead hovered near hers. Outside the freight room wall, the telegraph sounder began tapping an ordinary cattle message. The wire no longer carried a dead man's lie, but Mr. Harrow was waiting at the station desk with a permanent post in Prescott, and Lenora had not yet decided whether Juniper Wells would remain her home. The Prescott offer remained on the message desk, while Orson Vale and Barton Keel were taken before the justice of the peace. Lenora did not touch it. Through the station window, she watched Deputy Sheriff Ortega escort the two men across the dusty street under separate guard. Keel walked with his wrists tied, and his brown satchel carried behind him as evidence. Vale kept his back straight, though the company badge no longer marked his coat. Wade stood near the freight scale with one hand resting against his injured shoulder. He had not asked what Lenora intended to do. That restraint mattered more now than any argument for Juniper Wells. Mr. Harrow adjusted his spectacles and tapped the written offer. "The Prescott post is permanent. Better salary, better quarters, a larger office and 2 operators beneath you." Ruth Danner sat under the stopped station clock, with her document case across her lap. "You make it sound as though she would be promoted away from the place your company nearly dismantled. I am offering what authority I possess. Then she may tell you what authority should have done sooner." Harrow glanced at Lenora. "Mrs. Danner does not waste an opening." "Neither should you," Lenora said. Nathan Grier returned before Harrow could answer. He carried the justice's preliminary notes and 3 separate custody receipts. Ortega followed without the prisoners. "Both men are being held pending further territorial proceedings," Grier said. The justice found sufficient cause to keep Keel on allegations of telegraph, tampering, possession of stolen company equipment, assault upon Wade Stroud, unlawful detention of Mateo Ruiz, and suspected express theft. Harrow nodded toward the empty street. "And Vale? Conspiracy to defraud the express company, falsification of company records, and direction of unauthorized routing." Grier laid the signed directive from Cindercut beside Harrow's authenticated copies from Vale's office. The route number match and the live diversion support those allegations. The justice did not attach Mateo's detention or Wade's assault to Vale without further proof, as he should not, Lenora said. Truth had already suffered enough from people claiming more than they could prove. Ortega placed the custody receipts on the desk. Daniel's original warning remains sealed in county evidence. The false confession remains in the Prescott copybook. The Cedar Siding relay book remains in company custody under witnessed extract. The portable field key, relay coil, Cindercut pouch tags, single stolen express seal, Vale directive, routing forms, and the 3 message copies from today are all listed separately. Nothing had drifted. Nothing had vanished between rooms. Harrow opened another envelope. "The company correction is prepared." He read it aloud. Daniel Stroud's genuine warning had been sent from East Spur at 9:07 in the evening, and received at Juniper Wells through Cedar Siding at 9:18. Daniel had been declared dead at 9:22. The confession entered in his name at 9:41 was fraudulent. The company withdrew the theft designation from Daniel's record. Wade's face remained still until Harrow finished. Then the rigid line across his shoulders eased by a fraction. "That correction goes to every office that received the accusation," Wade said. "It will," Harrow replied. "And the wages withheld from Daniel," Greer answered. "They will be paid into Daniel Stroud's estate under proper administration. Claims and debts are settled first. Any lawful remainder passes afterward." "Good," Wade said. "I do not want $1 in my hand before his name is clean in every book." Lenora heard no performance in the words. Daniel's money would not become proof of Wade's motive. Harrow slid the Prescott offer closer. "Now, Miss Bell." Lenora unfolded the paper but did not read it again. She already knew what it promised: distance, respectability, and the chance to begin where no one had watched her surrender a badge. Leaving could be freedom. It could also be the last decision Vale made for her. "I have terms," she said. Harrow blinked. "For the Prescott appointment? For Juniper Wells?" Ruth's mouth curved. Wade remained silent. Lenora set her conditions plainly. Juniper Wells would reopen. She would serve as station agent and primary operator. Any alteration to a high-value route would require a second operator's signature. Duplicate equipment inventories would be kept both in Juniper Wells and Prescott. No original message book would leave the station without a witness transfer entered in both locations. Emergency Routing Authority would name the issuing office and the responsible superintendent. "You are asking the company to admit that one man held too much unseen power," Harrow said. "Your own evidence has already admitted it. And if I decline, then I take Prescott. But closing Juniper Wells will not erase the place where your route failed. The ranches still need the siding. The company still needs an operator. The wire still needs rules stronger than one superintendent's initials." One of the ranch representatives stepped forward. "Cinderwash, the Bar T, and McKay's outfit all depend on this station. Close it, and the express company loses our freight to another line when one reaches close enough." Harrow looked toward the platform where the delayed payroll train still waited under dual signature.
"You arranged their support?"
he asked Lenora. "Vale arranged it when he stole from men who keep accounts." Harrow almost smiled. By late afternoon, he agreed in writing. Lenora would return as acting station agent, while Prescott assigned a second operator. Her permanent appointment would follow once duplicate controls were established. Her suspension and dismissal were withdrawn. Harrow placed the brass station badge in her palm. The metal had not changed. The terms had. Mateo, moving carefully with his cane, checked the clock's lower panel before leaving. The screws he had replaced after the witnessed opening remained secure. Harrow authorized a clock repairman to restore the mechanism before regular service resumed. The clock would not merely hang above the truth. It would keep it. Ruth ordered Mateo into her wagon for the ride to Cinder Wash. He objected once, then stopped when breathing made the argument painful. Grier returned to Prescott with the witnessed extracts. Ortega carried the evidence receipts back to his office. Harrow boarded the evening train, after reminding Lenora that written safeguards required people willing to obey them. "That is true of every promise," she said. When the last company man left, Lenora locked the cash drawer and stepped onto the platform. Wade waited beside the bench with her gray prayer shawl folded over one arm. The frayed corner had been repaired with small, close stitches. "Ruth mended it," he said. "She claimed the loose thread had offended her long enough." Lenora took the shawl. Their fingers brushed because neither avoided the contact. "Prescott would have been easier," Wade said. "In some ways. You did not stay because I asked. You did not ask. I wanted to. That is not the same." Wade glanced toward the track. "Why Juniper Wells?" Lenora settled the shawl around her shoulders. "Because the station matters. Because the work is mine. Because Daniel's warning should not be the last honest message sent from that key. She let the next truth arrive without disguise. And because you are here." Wade did not smile as though he had won. "I will not make myself the whole reason." "You are not. Good. You are part of it." He stepped closer, then stopped before closeness became assumption. The late light lay across the platform boards. "I love you," he said. No flourish protected the words. "I won't make that another order." Lenora felt the force of him in what he refused to demand. "What do you want?" she asked. "A life with you in it. Your work still yours. My word worth keeping." His injured shoulder lowered as he breathed. "I want to be the man who says what he will do before he does it." Lenora touched the repaired edge of the shawl. "I love you too." Relief crossed Wade's face without becoming possession. He did not reach for her. "That is not a proposal," he said. "No, I have thought about one. I expected you might. I can wait. Then ask after roundup begins." He watched her, hope held under discipline. Lenora continued, "Ask me on a day no one is bleeding, fleeing, or bargaining. I promise, and I may still take time to answer. Then I will wait for that too." Lenora placed one hand behind his neck and drew him down. Their kiss began slowly and deepened by mutual choice. Wade's arms came around her only after she leaned into him, holding her close without lifting or trapping. The shawl rested between them, warm from both bodies. When the kiss ended, Lenora remained against his chest until their breathing steadied. Wade did not ask what else she had prayed at Mile House. 6 weeks later, near the end of July, the Juniper Wells station had settled into ordinary traffic. The repaired clock kept time above the counter. A second operator copied cattle rates while Lenora finished a routine freight message. Wade entered carrying no bloodied dispatch, no warning, and no demand. He waited beyond the counter until cedar siding acknowledged her final figure. Then he removed his hat and said, "Will you walk with me when you close?" Lenora finished the freight message, signed the station call, and waited until cedar siding acknowledged the final figure before lifting her hand from the key. Wade remained beyond the counter with his hat in both hands. He had not interrupted. He had not tried to make the ordinary message less important, because he had come to ask an extraordinary question. "I can walk now," she said. Wade opened the gate in the counter and stepped aside so she could pass without brushing him. The courtesy had become familiar enough to seem simple. Lenora knew better. She locked the cash drawer, checked the duplicate route ledger, and told the second operator she would return before dark. Outside, late July heat still lingered above the rails, though the first evening breeze had begun moving through the juniper. Wade led her past the freight shed and along the wagon road toward the open land between Juniper Wells and Cincerwash. He did not take her hand. "Not yet." "You said after roundup began," he said. "I did. The first riders came in this morning. I heard them pass the station. No one is bleeding. Not today. No one is fleeing. Also true." Wade glanced at her. "And I brought no bargain." Lenora stopped beside a low ridge of black stone. The station roof stood behind them. Farther south, the road bent toward Ruth Danner's ranch. "Then you chose the day well." He faced her, hat still held before him. The wound at his temple had healed to a pale line beneath his hair. His shoulder no longer hung stiffly, though long hours in the saddle still tired it. "I cannot offer you Cinderwash," he said. "It belongs to Ruth, and she intends to remain alive long enough to remind everyone." Lenora's mouth curved. "I can offer what is mine. My wages, my cattle share, my work as foreman while Ruth will have me, a house we rent between the ranch and station until we can afford another arrangement. No promise that your work becomes smaller because mine keeps me in the saddle." He paused. "No promise that I will never be angry, only that I will say what I mean before anger becomes action, and that your refusal will remain yours." Lenora studied him. He had brought no land deed, no inherited fortune, no family object made sacred by a dead man. Nothing designed to make refusal feel like betrayal. "And if Prescott offers me twice the salary next year," she asked, "we discuss it before either of us decides where the other must live. If Ruth sells the ranch, then I find work. If the territorial case drags on for years, it may." That was not an answer. "Then yes, I still ask." Lenora folded her hands before her. "If I forgive my father only in pieces." Wade's eyes remained steady. "I will not ask you to forgive Ephraim for my comfort. If I never forgive one part of it, then that part stays unforgiven." The answer gave her no instruction about what a good daughter ought to feel. That was why she trusted it. Wade drew one breath. "Lenora Bell." Will you marry me after fall roundup? Love pressed toward the answer. But freedom deserved its full measure. She let the question stand between them until it belonged to no crisis, no rescue, no threat. Then she said yes. Wade closed his eyes once. Relief moved over his face without triumph. When he opened them, he did not reach for her. Lenora stepped closer and placed both hands against his cheeks. She kissed him first. Wade waited through the first touch of her mouth, giving her the same room he had given every other choice. Then his hands settled at her waist. The kiss deepened slowly, warm and certain, with no urgency borrowed from danger. When Lenora drew back, Wade rested his forehead near hers. "I did not bring a ring," he said. "Good, good? I would rather choose the band with you than have some dead relative decide what fits my hand." A quiet laugh escaped him. "Plain, plain, affordable, especially affordable. Ruth will call that unromantic. Ruth owns a ranch. She can afford romance." Wade brushed his thumb once along the side of her coat, then let his hand fall. "We tell her together. Together." Several weeks later, near the end of August 1891, Juniper Wells had settled into a rhythm that no longer depended on vigilance alone. The repaired station clock marked each hour correctly above the counter. A second operator countersigned every change involving payroll, bank drafts, or high-value pouches. Duplicate equipment inventories traveled to Prescott, while matching copies remained in Juniper Wells. No original message book left the station without a witness transfer entered in both offices. Daniel's genuine warning remained sealed in county evidence. The false confession remained in the Prescott copybook. The Cedar Siding relay record stayed in company custody, under witnessed extract. The portable field key, relay coil, single stolen express seal, Vale's signed directive, and the recovered pouch tags remained held for the territorial proceedings. Vale and Keel had not been convicted. Grier warned that formal charges moved slowly and that lawyers could stretch one fact across an entire season. Lenora accepted that. Justice did not become false because it took time. Vale no longer controlled the route. Keel no longer touched the wire. Daniel Stroud's public record no longer named him as a thief. The company had begun restoring documented losses, and Daniel's withheld wages remained inside his estate until lawful claims were settled. Ephraim Bell's part had not been erased. Lenora would not purchase her own peace by making him innocent. Wade remained foreman at Cinder Wash Ranch. Ruth remained its owner, and announced this fact whenever a visiting cattleman addressed Wade as though the acres belonged to him. Lenora and Wade found a modest house for rent halfway between ranch and station. The pump complained with every stroke, the kitchen floor leaned slightly east, and the backyard held enough room for herbs, a clothesline, and one horse if the horse possessed patience. The wedding would wait until fall roundup ended. Waiting no longer felt like punishment. One evening, Wade arrived near the close of Lenora's shift and stood beyond the counter while she copied an ordinary cattle message from Prescott. He removed his hat, but did not speak until she signed the station call. When the second operator took over, Lenora closed the ledger and joined him on the platform bench beneath the station window. The high desert heat had broken. Telegraph wire hummed faintly above the track. Lenora unfolded the gray prayer shawl and spread it across both their shoulders. Ruth's small stitches held the once frayed corner firm. Wade lifted one edge to help, then let Lenora settle it where she wished. "You are thinking hard," he said. "I am deciding whether to pray aloud. You do not owe me the words. I know. That was why she could give them." Lenora bowed her head. Wade remained fully awake beside her, his shoulder warm beneath the wool. "Lord, keep Daniel's name in truth," she said. "Receive what repentance my father could not finish. Give me courage to keep the whole account, even when one part wounds another. Keep me humble when being right feels too much like power. Teach us to build a home where neither love nor fear requires silence." Her fingers rested on the bench between them. "And when one of us speaks, help the other listen before answering." Wade did not ask which line had been meant for him. Lenora turned her hand upward. He joined it, his fingers closing around hers with the ease of a promise already practiced. Then he bent and kissed her temple. Above them, the station clock marked the hour correctly. Inside, the sounder began tapping another routine message across the Arizona dusk. Lenora listened to the wire, to Wade's steady breathing, and to the open future between each measured beat.